For those of you who don't know me, I'm Marcia Lawson, Director of the School of Art and Design, and I'm here tonight to introduce one of our newest faculty members, Bruce Tharp. Bruce is an Associate Professor of Industrial Design at UIC, most recently an Associate Professor in the Designed Objects program at the School of the Art Institute, so we're quite thrilled he came a little west and joined us. Bruce got his mechanical engineering degree, Bachelor of Science from Bucknell University, his Master of Industrial Design from Pratt Institute, and his PhD in Sociocultural Anthropology from University of Chicago. Bruce will be teaching involved in all levels of our industrial design program, but he is specifically will be focusing on our graduate program in industrial design, which is very much in a growth state. It was suspended a number of years ago and is just in its, I think, third year of reinstatement. So we're anxious to grow this program, and it's Bruce's area of interest to do that. Also, in addition to teaching at the School of the Art Institute, Bruce has taught at Pratt Institute. He is a principal of Materius, a professional practice that creates and licenses furniture, furnishings, and other self-initiated designed objects for the domestic sphere. And his partner in this effort is our own Stephanie Munson-Tharp, who many of you know as a member of our Faculty of Industrial Design. I'll just brag about a couple of things that I'm sure Bruce will go into in more detail, but the works of Materius have recently been featured in the Milan Furniture Fair, the International Contemporary Furniture Fair in New York, that's ICFF, Cologne Furniture Fair, Brussels Furniture Fair, and also locally Chicago Magazine. There's also been works exhibited at Design Within Reach. And I think I'll let Bruce take it from here. Okay, welcome Bruce Tharp.
Thank you, welcome. It's 5 o'clock, so I really appreciate you making it here. I'm going to repeat a few things that Marcia just mentioned because I didn't realize she was going to do a little bit more of an intro like that. So I just want to spend a couple minutes going over my background before I get into the meat of the talk. As Marcia said, for the last 5 years, I've been teaching full-time in the Designed Objects program at the School of the Art in Chicago. And one of the reasons I was brought there was specifically to help build and grow their new graduate program. So it's a sort of a natural fit coming here and doing the same thing. There I taught studios, labs, seminars for both grads and undergrads. But before that, I worked for Hayworth, which is a Michigan-based global company, and they make furniture, removable walls, floors, things that generally for the interior office spaces. And similar to what Herman Miller, Knoll, Steelcase, its better known competitors do. But there my title was a sociocultural anthropologist and design researcher, and I worked with the ideation group there, which was an in-house think tank. And one of my other roles there was I was the liaison between the research department and the industrial design department. And earlier in my career, I was an Army nuclear weapons officer serving in Germany, from platoon leader to an executive officer, and then was a captain in the individual ready reserves for a number of years after that. And as Marcia mentioned, since 2005, I've co-run a commercial and critical studio with my wife, Stephanie, who's here. All right, so what I'm going to do today is basically, in about 45 minutes, I'm going to introduce you to the breadth of my practice, which extends across the domains of research, theory, and making. And I believe it's this combination of expertise that distinguishes me from my peers and makes me most special as a designer and valuable as ultimately here as a faculty member. But in sort of defining these areas, by research, I mean primary qualitative user research, and I'll go and I'll explain that, define that a little bit later. But it's not just about doing research, but advancing the field theoretically and methodologically. With theory, I mean constructing theories and frameworks that guide and inspire design practice. So not just using theory, but creating theory. And by making, I mean designing and fabricating for commercial mass production, self-production, and for non-commercial exhibition. And then there's the concomitant entrepreneurialism that's necessary to get these made things out into the world. So broadly, my practice is manifest in book publication, article publication, popular web publication, conference speaking, lecturing, patenting, product licensing, self-manufacturing, and exhibiting. And much of this is due to my education, as Marcia was mentioning. So a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering, Industrial Design, and Social Cultural Anthropology. And while seemingly divergent, really these three fields represent a powerful combination when applied to both the intellectual and the practical sides of material culture. And over the last 5 years, while I was at SEIC, while I have the expertise in these three areas, this is probably how it really fell out in terms of my practice as far as the distribution goes. And I'm guessing at UIC, it's probably going to look a little bit more like this, which is probably a little bit more balanced with them. Okay, so the way that I'm structuring the talk is that I'm going to spend about 10 minutes about research, about 10 minutes on theory, and then I'll get to the pictures, or more of the pictures, with the making section. That'll be probably about 25 minutes long. So, all right, so let's start with the research. So it pains me a little bit to spend such a short time talking about the dear topic of design research. But what I'm going to do is share with you very briefly some of my experience while I was at Hayworth, and also one contentious issue that was kind of born out of my time there. So. And again, with the research, I'm talking about primary qualitative user research. So primary meaning the designer is doing the research, producing the findings, producing the data, so they're not reading someone else's work. Qualitative, this is the softer, more interpretive stuff. And it's user research, which means it's focused mostly on the people who are using or could potentially use the designs. So it's the primary qualitative user research that the ideation group focused on at Hayworth. And these are just some of the examples of some of the work that came out of the group. And this is a group of, it's a small group of scientists, technicians, and designers conducting scientific research and also designing prototypes, like you see here, within a number of arenas regarding human performance in the office and the future of work and workspaces. Can I get a little bit more light? Yeah, thanks. That's good. Yeah, that's fine. And one near-term project that was successful is this Zodi Task Chair. And I was involved with the focus group research, interviewing the interior architecture community, trying to define some of the critical visual and functional parameters and features on this chair. And I also worked doing some of the user testing as we validated some of the more intense ergonomic research that was performed by a state university team that we were partnering with on this. And an important role, but a little less formalized, was for me. I was a liaison between the industrial designers and the research group, and also with the engineers. So I helped to deal with some of the turf battles that typically occur with product development between some of the different groups. And I could do this specifically because I understood the three areas and spoke their language. So that of the research, that of the design, and that of the engineering group. And while I was there, the ideation group itself had identified this area of organizational culture as a key knowledge area for Hayworth, the company, to develop. So the idea is that if we could better understand our clients, their corporate cultures, their values, behaviors, beliefs, the actual ones and then the preferred ones, then we could actually better serve them. So we like to think of ourselves as a space solutions company that just happened to sell furniture as opposed to a furniture company. So as the cultural anthropologist of the group, I led their theoretical and methodological positioning around this topic of organizational culture. This is an example of one of the interactive survey tools that I designed to help assess a group's culture. So this is sort of an interactive web-based that's delivered through the web. And it's that kind of tool that helped with short-term projects, with sort of immediate client needs. But we're also able to do that over time, collect that information, and we did more longitudinal studies, which helped the future product development. And lastly, another key thing that I was involved when I was there. I had the freedom to do a little bit more of blue sky research projects, and one of them was working on this area of refuge, like where do we find refuge in the office space. So I could observe, in-house, observe, interview, make physical design prototypes, and then test them all in-house. But while I was there, working with the social scientists and these lay researchers and designers, some interesting points of contention arose. And this is very typical for this young field of design research. And one of those is something that I call the science divide. And this is where we have PhD social scientists on one side, and on the other side are designers who do research. So the social scientists claim that most design research is bad research. It's not good research. It's woefully underdetermined. So its Achilles heel really being sample size, so the number of people are actually involved in a study. But on the other side, the designers are looking at the social scientists and saying that they're out of touch with some of these real-world demands, and they can't get things done on time and with the budgets that are available. Well, the budget usually wins, and what happens is the social scientist sort of begrudgingly does what they ultimately feel is not the greatest research. Now, since I'm both a social scientist and a practicing designer, and there are so few of us in the world, I think I have a unique and valuable perspective to offer in bridging this divide. So. And really, this is what distinguishes me most from other anthropologists and social scientists who just happen to be working in the design field. I have an impassioned and informed perspective on both of these sides, which I think allows for again, better bridging. So this is kind of my prescription for some of the immediate ailments of design research now. First, we need to start admitting that nearly all design research fails to be valid, reliable, and generalizable. And these are really the hallmarks of scientific work and what make it what it is. And design research doesn't really live up to that, so we need to begin to acknowledge that. Even when we do realize this weakness, we often present our research as valid and reliable because we live in a science and data bias world, and it really looks good to our clients and our customers. But generally, it's disingenuous. Also, we need to really embrace the generative nature of our research, and this is really its true value. So we need to forget about the truth and sort of capital K knowing, and this is really what valid, reliable, generalizable gets you, but we're not really there. But what design research does is it expands our minds in ways that that designers can make interesting connections. It puts us in situations and with people who inspire us in ways that we couldn't sitting amongst our peers in our studios. So we need to be proud of what it can do, and defend its worth, but also not feel like we need to apologize for what it doesn't do well. Because you don't really see scientists apologizing because they're not sure what their research findings actually mean or what should be done with them. You know, that's just the science of it. Also, designers don't make good scientific researchers. And this is because design is about prescription and science is about description. So there are two very different talents associated with those. And fundamentally, good designers are optimists, not skeptics. So designers need to look out ahead and see and believe in possibility. They need to champion the unknown but possible. But a good scientist is a skeptic, so it's not true until it's proven so. And if science needs this, and we need science to be this. But it's really the death knell for design. And research is also not a panacea. So there are plenty of examples of successful products that didn't use design research and failed ones that actually did employ it. And therefore, we need to be okay and admit that not doing primary user research can be okay sometimes. We can still have good outcomes without it. So we just need to sort of pick our battles there. And this last statement would have been seemingly obvious a decade ago, but now it's nearly blasphemous within the product design field. So while there are many other issues at play in this very young and increasingly valued field of design research, this science divide is particularly a particularly important topic but unfortunately one that's not being talked about enough openly in the professional sphere because there's money and respect at stake. And it's not being taught to our nation's students because there's not enough understanding, integration, and balance between the social science experience, expertise, and as we see in the classroom. So I hope to be able to have an effect on this. So now I'm going to move into the second portion on theory. So I create theories and frameworks that guide and inspire design practice. And this started with my, my graduate thesis at Pratt, where I was looking into alternatives to products that were merely utilitarian, so ones that instead had the capacity for deep human connections. And I was working on a framework that would help, would basically enable the design of more soulful products. However, I quickly realized that the design discipline didn't have the theoretical tools to adequately conceptualize and interrogate material culture. And it was this intellectual lacuna that led me to pursue doctoral work in the anthropology department at the University of Chicago. And that's one that's venerated especially for its emphasis on Western social theory. So my research there dealt with theories of value as they relate to material culture and consumption, and which I specifically applied to an Amish community, an old order Amish community in Indiana. And the title of that work is Aesthetical Value, not aesthetical, but aesthetical value, Consumption and the Materiality of Spirituality Among the Old Order Amish. And while I was living among the Amish for 2 years, methodologically, I worked as a buggy maker's assistant, making these black buggies. I put 30,000 miles on my car, taxiing Amish around the state and region. I observed and interviewed Amish while they were shopping at auctions, flea markets, and yes, Walmart, like you see here. I worked with several furniture makers, interviewed dozens and dozens of Amish about their valued possessions, and spent untold hours sitting in tree stands while hunting deer and shivering on frozen lakes, staring at holes in the ice. They called it ice fishing, but it was pretty much staring at holes. But one theory that came out of this work that I tailored for design is a theory of value and dispossession. And what this does, it turns on its head the normal notion of value being produced through the possession or use of an object. So normally, by having the object, that's how we get value from it. And this idea came about through my Walmart shopping trips with the Amish, where they were confronted with aisles of these electronic goods that they weren't allowed to use. They're prevented from owning. And while many of them were really uncomfortable around these things, some of them actually reported, talking to them, felt good walking past these things, walking down that electronics aisle. So a benefit arose for them by practicing or publicly performing their asceticism and refusing sort of the allure of these electronic worldly goods. So in a sense, so value was produced through their rejection of these things. So this notion of value and dispossession deals with the way that value, worth, benefit is produced through the existence of products, but by rejecting their own ownership or use of them, or through divestment, which is the ridding of oneself of products that one owns or uses. And it's this theory that has increasing really relevance for our discipline, as it obviously has connections to design sustainability. So I just want to go over some of the most basic questions that this kind of theory might arise. And I'll start with divestment here. So can products be designed so that they produce value upon disposal and therefore better encourage forms of reuse or recycling? Like we see in gifting practices where value is produced for the giver as well as the receiver, can the end of a product's life be reimagined as a gifting opportunity or experience? And similarly, how might the idea of competitive gifting, like we see, for example, in Native American potlatch events, how might that translate to the competitive gifting of reuse and recycling? And with product rejection. So could parsimony become competitive, sort of individually or socially, similar to the way that owners of hybrid vehicles have reported putting their cars in neutral while watching their digital fuel efficiency meters surpass 100 miles per gallon, trying to top each other or top their personal best. And perhaps there could be greater focus on the consumption information that users receive. So why don't all water faucets integrate beautiful poetic flow meters? Why must homeowners trudge outside and search behind the bushes for the electrical meter so they can have some idea of their household energy consumption? And how can beneficial rejection be inspired through new object categories, object attributes, object systems, and human-object relations? So these are just some of the very basic questions, really the lowest hanging fruit that this theory can begin to inspire. So, and while this is an idea that came about with the Amish, it was actually just a tiny portion of that project. I think it was 1 page out of 400 in the book. But since then, it's been published in the design literature, and I actually recently I've kind of dusted it off a little bit and started to integrate it into some studios, especially around projects that were dealing with sustainability. So, but more recently, I've been working on with Stephanie on this 4-field approach to design and theorizing this realm of discursive design. And now I'm only going to give a cursory explanation of these 4 fields, but I'm going to use it to structure the making section of the talk, so it'll make more sense then when you actually see some examples. But this 4-field approach is a way of principally categorizing the vast range of product design experience. So we have all this product design work that's going out there, and this is just putting it in these 4 basic buckets. And the profession of industrial design is rooted, of course, in service to industry. Our forefathers were stylists in the least derogatory sense of the term, and they were collaborators with engineers, manufacturing, marketing, and the executive arms of commercial entities. And most typically, their efforts resulted in mass manufactured goods sold on the mass marketplace. So. However, with almost a century of maturation, the discipline has responded to shifts in culture, society, the economy, technology, and politics, and it's really ventured beyond the nest. Now, this isn't to say that there's been this universal shift in the primary practice of design, product design, but instead just that the field has broadened and there's more and varied participants in it. So. So these are the 4 fields, and when we look at commercial design, it's about monetary gain. Responsible design, it's motivated by service to the underserved. Experimental, it's about exploration and discovery. And discursive design, it's motivated by critical voice or discourse. And I'm just going to go through some important points about this scheme. It's a framework. It's really a tool for the designer to help clarify their position and the efficacy of their work. So its most important measure of success is if it helps a designer in design practice. So it's not theory for theory's sake. Secondly, it's based upon the designer's primary intention in the design project. So it's about intention, and it's less about audience reception, but hopefully there's some correspondence between the two. And it's a first sift. It's a wide mesh just for these categories, and there's certainly tighter meshes that can subsequently be used. And these 4 fields are not exclusionary silos. So designers often have multiple intentions. Rarely is it a singular intention. So there are hybrid forms of these 4, and there's overlap between the fields. And I'll be pointing some of these out with my own work, these hybrid categories. Now, since first introducing this approach a couple of years ago, I've been spreading the word sort of nationally with sort of 9 or 10 lectures to industrial design departments and at industrial design conferences. And Stephanie and I wrote a very popular online article that's been read by thousands, and the article is discussed in classrooms across the globe, and in a few it's actually a required reading. Design programs in Norway and New Zealand are using it to help debate and reformulate their curricula for the 21st century, and it's received a lot of positive response from individual practitioners and academics. And I just have a few comments that people made either online or had emailed me. So thank you for clarifying an issue that's muddied the profession for a long time. I like the article because it seems to give names to what initiatives I'm already involved in. This facilitates communication with my colleagues and potentially other adopters of the same. And I have, since reading it, began to apply these terms on a daily basis. And this is really an important outcome for us. So one of the goals was to help create this common language and a framework that makes for more effective and efficient communication and critique amongst designers. But there's certainly detractors to this. These are ideas that can get under this traditionally minded skin, and I hope that they continue to get our discipline talking, and I'll share a couple of those. What problem are you trying to find a solution to? You know what kind of designer you are, just look at your work. You don't need these useless categories to identify the work that you do, you identify it by doing it. Nope, you've got it all wrong. Discursive design, as you call it, is art. Design solves problems. Why should we really care if other people don't understand what design is? And these comments really bring out the weight of industrial design's legacy as the handmaiden of industry and that of doers and not necessarily thinkers. And it also speaks to why product design theory lags so far behind other fields. It's hard to imagine these kinds of comments within an art or architectural discourse. So this project of the 4 fields is really just a setup, a framing for this area of discursive design. And it's the one field that needs the most attention. And this is where the thrust of my theoretical work will continue with a book project. And as I said, I'm going to be using these 4 categories to talk about the making, which is the sort of the final portion of my talk. So with making, it's an important part of my practice. If you're designing 3-dimensional stuff, then you need to understand it as such. The computer or the sketchbook really can't get you there. But it's not just making the objects, but making them visible in the world. So how do you want people to encounter and engage with it? So there's a fair degree of entrepreneurialism and go-getting as part of this process of making. So for me, it's both fabrication and dissemination. So what I'm going to show you is a small selection of some of the materialist design projects from the last 5 years that help best illustrate these 4 fields. And I'm going to start with the commercial design. And commercial design, needs little introduction. It's really what the overwhelming majority of our discipline is involved in, products largely produced for profit via mass consumption. And the first project in this area is called Stack. So this is a porcelain vase, rendered here in a few styles, that's being produced by an upscale French furniture company, Ligny Rosé. It's comprised of one water vessel, this sort of largest one on the bottom, and several of these different rings. So the idea here is that one vase can accommodate a whole range of flowers. So whether you have a single flower, it can stand upright like in a bud vase with the help of the top ring with the kind of hole in it that you see there. It works with a bunch of flowers and even with a bunch of lengths of the stems. So if you have long stems, then the water vessel goes on the very bottom and the rings are stacked on top. If you have shorter stems, then you either remove the rings altogether or stack them on the bottom. So again, one vase being able to accommodate a whole range. And this is a project that we designed and then pitched to Ligny Rosé. And this is our studio's most typical approach. The upside is that it affords us to work on the kind of projects that we want to. The downside is it's generally a more risky way to get something actually manufactured. So this is what I call the design and convince approach to the market. So design it first and then try and convince someone that they should be producing this. But you really have a better chance of getting designs to market if you work from a brief, which is an assignment essentially, that's given to you by a manufacturer. And this is the way our designs for CB2 work. So they provide a brief and they ask for products in a particular category. We provide designs, and these are admittedly less exciting products because they're a safe and a frugal company, but it comes with an interesting set of parameters, and so it's not necessarily easy design work. But this approach is the convince and design approach. So you convince them that you're a good designer and to give you a brief, and then you get to work on the designing. So, and this next project here is called Cubbies, so some of you may be familiar with it. This is the first product that our studio really designed. It's a coat hook that instead of being linear like a nail, it's a volume, so you can store keys, glasses, phones, gloves, etc. in it. And this won Interior Design Magazine's Best Product of the Year award in 2006 and a couple of other design awards. And we began making this ourselves with a one-piece silicone mold, and we're selling them through a local gallery, Orange Skin. Some of you may know that. So this began with this sort of design and make approach to commercial work. Design it, make it, and then try and get it out there. But after about 2 years, we were contacted by a manufacturer, Charles and Marie, who asked to actually produce and sell it. So they didn't actually know that we were making them. They just seen it on a blog or something like that and had been a fan. So this is actually quite rare and perhaps the least likely road to manufacture. Someone actually calling you out of the blue, wanting to put your thing into production. So this is what we call the design in Providence approach. So, but the last two projects in this commercial era that I'll show you sort of lean into the invention realm, which is often, though not always, kind of accompanies this kind of design work. So, the first one is, the name is Buckle Boos, and it's a baby car seat, baby seat strap holders. And this is a product that was inspired by our new parenthood and the challenge of putting a sleepy or fussy baby, an infant, into one of these car seats. So normally the harness straps fall into the center of the seat, like you see here in the picture on your left. And you end up laying the baby on top of them, and it forces the parents to kind of fish these things out from under them. And the design, the Buckle Boo is what you see sort of on the right-hand side. It's a system that allows you to open and keep that open to put the baby in, so you don't have to fish around. So it's a simple, inexpensive product, and it's shown here. And this is one possible embodiment of the idea. This sort of strap that attaches to the harness buckle with a low-profile hook and loop mate, which attaches to the side of the car carrier. So this is that sort of the hook and loop mate on the side of it. Now this product works really well. Parents love the idea, and it's easy to manufacture once you get over the hurdle of the child product safety certification stuff. But this is the type of product that I would suggest and encourage young designers to begin with if they want to go into mass production themselves. So this is with design in mass manufacture. So why is this one so good? Well, the initial tooling outlay is really inexpensive. It's just a simple die cut, so it's a few $100s for that. And it's something that can be manufactured in the United States, which saves you the hassle of all the hassle that is involved with overseas production. It's the intellectual property is protectable. So, and this one actually has a utility patent pending on it. One of the classic problems with designers and inventors pursuing products is that they're just too complicated, or the tooling or the initial inventory is expensive, or it can be too easily knocked off. So just because you've designed a good product doesn't mean that it's a good product to manufacture or a good product to self-produce. So some ideas you just have to leave behind, or try and license it to someone else to deal with all of the production issues, the distribution, the intellectual property, and all of that. And that sort of leads us into this last commercial product here. And it's a dental device. So I'm a partner on this project with a dentist in Manhattan. And this shown here is this inexpensive dental impression tray that's used to make molds of teeth. So our design for a new tray, which I was advised not to publicly disclose here, but it falls into the same genre of what you see here. The one we have is three distinct advantages. The first one is it improves the user experience by helping prevent gagging. So what happens, you stick this in the mouth, and this green and purple stuff starts to ooze down the back of your throat and can cause gagging. Secondly, it improves the quality of the impression that you get, so there's less retakes with this. And thirdly, it reduces the amount of this green and purple stuff that a dentist actually has to use. And this is fairly, the most expensive part of this process is this goop. And so you're able to use less of that. And that's really the main motivation for dentists to actually use this device. So we have a patent pending on this, and two manufacturers who are quite interested in licensing this from us. So this is the design and license approach. So someone else deals with all the production headaches, the certification, the FDA approvals, the inventory and the distribution, and they're taking all the risk. And so the designer gets a small royalty in this case. So those are some of the main sort of ways of working in this commercial realm. And because of this kind of commercial and entrepreneur involvement, I'm able to help students with a whole host of manufacturing and dissemination issues, licensing contracts, manufacturing relationships, packaging, certifications, overseas shipping and duties, patenting and intellectual property protection, trade show exhibition, determining to whom, when, and how to pitch their ideas, as well as how they may begin to wholesale and retail their own self-produced work, whether it be for web stores or national retailers or local boutiques. So this commercial arena is one that's crucial to many of our design students, but there are certainly other design motivations that they bring into the studio. And so that leads us to this responsible design area, the second one. So responsible design encompasses what's largely understood as socially responsible design, and it's driven by a more humanitarian notion of service. So here the designer works to provide a useful, usable, and desirable product to those who are often ignored by the market. Issues such as ethics, compassion, altruism, and philanthropy surround this work, be it for users in developing or developed countries. And while responsible design can and often does have a relationship to the market, its primary intent is not about the maximization of profit, but instead one of service. So I'm going to show you a few projects from our own studio, but this hardly encompasses the broad range of possibilities in this area. The first one is called Flash Jump, and it's basically just this electronic jump rope. So this is a project that addresses the obesity epidemic, especially for children, approaching the issue from the exercise front. So the brief here is like how to get kids moving. So it's a jump rope that incorporates electronics to make it more fun and engaging with varied levels of difficulty. The idea is that different colors, there are 3 different colors here that you may be able to see on the rendering, that they flash in the handle, and they correspond to different jump rope moves, like crossing the hands, jumping on one foot, or double jumps. And there are 3 modes that it works in. It flashes to the beat of external music, so it's more fun in that way. It works in a random mode, and it can be used with others, reacting to the signals of someone else's rope. So I'm looking at yours and doing what yours is telling me, and you're looking at mine, vice versa. So it becomes this social activity. So this is a high-tech approach, which actually has some advantages for the target audience. But my general design preference is for more low-tech design. So we worked on the same issue of how to get kids moving using some different tactics. So the one here is called Throwdown, and it's a game for 1 or more players that's played with silicone jacks and cards, and these are some of the silicone jacks just rendered in white. So it's designed to be social, inexpensive, portable, scalable for different skill levels, used indoors or out, and maybe set to music. So when kids play Throwdown, they begin by throwing those jacks onto the ground or the floor, and they select a card from the deck, and based on their card selection, they create a strategy for jumping and doing other moves between the jacks, which allows for the accumulation of points. So it's this kind of mix between hopscotch, jacks, and twister. And the last of these responsible projects is called One World, and it's actually a gesture. So with this last project, the user or entity that's being served is not a person, but is the planet. This is the design of a gesture that allows people to communicate approval or disapproval of others and of the environmentally related behavior of others. And this, apologies to Stephanie here. You begin by pointing at the person that you want to praise or shame, and then you rotate your hand back, making this sort of circle. So this represents this one world. And this is about tapping into one of the planet's most powerful and perhaps unlimited natural resources, and that's social pressure. So it's a zero-carbon footprint solution that can reap amazing rewards once this gesture is well known. So the proposition is, would more people use reusable shopping bags or ride their bikes if they knew they were going to get praise from strangers on their way to the store? And contrarily, would store owners close their front doors of the front doors of their air-conditioned shops if in the summer, if they knew people walking by would be doing this and sneering at them? Or would people be less likely to sit with their cars idling if people might walk by and look at them right in the eyes and start to make this kind of gesture, as opposed to another kind of gesture? So this was an entry for a design competition. So it wasn't what they were looking for. They really wanted an object. But the idea is, had we won the prize money, the plan was to use it to do a public awareness campaign to get the word out. So sort of in the spirit of the Yes We Can web video done by will.i.am for Obama's presidential campaign. But I'm not will.i.am. And as it is right now, you're among the only people in the world who have seen this. So it's probably not going to catch on, unless you start, right? Okay, so the third arena here is the experimental design. So this represents a fairly narrow swath within the product design field, and its primary intention is exploration, experimentation, and discovery. So experimental design is defined in many instances more by its process than by its outcome. In its purest form, it's not driven by an overly specific end goal of application, but instead it's motivated by a curiosity, an inquiry into, for example, a technology, a manufacturing technique, a material, a concept, or an aesthetic issue. So again, I'm going to show a few examples of our work, but this hardly encompasses the range of possibility. So the first one is called Master Switch. So this is a remote control radio frequency switch that when pulled sends a signal to a receiver that's plugged into the wall. So this allows you to turn on and off any electrical device that's plugged into it. So you pull down on this, number one, you pull down on this thing. Number two, it sends this signal to this device that's plugged into the wall, and you're able to turn on and off anything. So while radio frequency switches have been around for years, this is a new type of switch that harnesses the power of pulling down the tassel to generate the electricity required to send the signal. So there's no batteries here. So by pulling down on this, it actually it harvests that energy using piezoelectric technology, and so there are no batteries used in this. So historically, a butler pole was a rope attached to a bell that was used by wealthy homeowners to summon servants. So the idea is that our electrical appliances, the lights, radios, blenders, are these domestic servants of today. So the interface between human and machine is altered and questioned. So this is a good example of the hybrid object that I was mentioning earlier, so with multiple intentions. So this project really began and is mostly about, it was like, what could I do with this really interesting technology that I stumbled upon? So in that way, it's experimental. So this is the technology and what can we do with it? But I figured it in a way that there's this small degree of voice or critique about a relationship with technology. So there's some discursive there. So, but primarily this experimental project, but with this little layer of discursiveness that's in there. So the next project is called Urn. So Urn is a ceramic urn that's specifically designed to functionally assist and dignify the process of scattering cremation ashes. And this project was inspired by the indelicate process that I experienced when scattering my birth father's ashes. So those of you who've scattered ashes before probably know that as part of the cremation process, the ashes are put into a plastic bag with a little twist tie, and that's put in a cardboard box, and that's delivered to you. So in our case, we ended up using a kitchen spoon to scoop out the ashes and spread them, and then when it was all done, sort of shaking the bag to make sure he was all gone. And it turns out I wasn't alone in this. So this is a quick sort of Google pick search, and here you find people doing the same thing. So we've got this kind of kitchen spoon or this large spoon down here, and this plastic coffee mug, and then people doing this kind of bag shake. So if this isn't a place for design intervention, then I don't know what is. So looking at this problem, so urn it's a typical urn in that it can be displayed on an altar at a memorial service. But after, when it's taken to the scattering site, these sections can be broken off to create these sort of handheld spreaders that can be shared, and multiple people can take part in this. And after sort of the spreading, these ceramic pieces, they can be broken and scattered along with the ashes, or they can be kept as this sort of memorial vase to hold a flower, or maybe even some of the ash in there if that's what's desired. So this is a pretty straightforward experimental project. So it explores the possibilities of the cremation scattering process. So if we actually wanted to do a commercial product addressing the same problem, we would have arrived at a different solution. But the intent here was not to do that. It was not about money, but instead just really look at this area and play around with this design problem. So the last of these experimental projects is called a DO, and these are porcelain. These are a series of porcelain gas fireplace logs that represent furniture styles from previous eras. So, for the ardent modernist, they offer a torrid farewell to our stylistic past. This project was identified by the Los Angeles Times as one of the 32 best designs during Milan Design Week in 2000, and it was included among the work of some of the world's most prominent designers like Philippe Starck, the Bourlac brothers, Patricia Arcola, Karim Rashid. And this project was really about playing with, exploring this idea of modernism and some of the vitriol of Adolf Loos's essay, Ornament and Crime. So it could be easy to maybe think of this as a discursive project, but for me, the intention in doing this was really about experimenting with this idea of modernism and not really saying anything substantive about it at all. So this project demonstrates that while experimental work often occurs with the exploration of technology, materials, and processes, you can also work in this experimental realm and in the world of with ideas itself. So. And this was critical. This was figured with this critical edge, but it's not about voicing a significant issue, which is really the realm of discursive design, which is the last of these four fields I'm going to talk about. So, discursive design refers to the creation of utilitarian objects whose primary purpose is to communicate ideas. So they engage discourse. These are tools for thinking. They raise awareness and perhaps understanding of substantive and often debatable issues of psychological, sociological, ideological consequence. Discursive design is the type of work that's generally less visible in the marketplace, though it can certainly exist there. But it's rather most often seen in exhibition, in print, in film, and this is where design rubs up most closely with art. So the first project in this arena is called Ghost Still. And Ghost Still is a kit that adapts Philippe Starck's iconic Louis Ghost chair into a solar still, allowing you to fill the seat of the chair with unclean water and then place the chair in the sun, from which clean drinking water is naturally distilled. And you see the bottle there that begins to fill up with the distillate. So this kit portends a future of clean water scarcity and the inability to rely on municipal sources. It imagines when even the wealthy, those that can afford Philippe Starck's $400 chair, when they have to adapt to shortages, and it points to the ironic way in which high design fits into this picture of the future. So this is a fairly provocative example of discursive design, so one that stretches kind of these conventional notions of what a product is. And while it's not such an efficient solar still, there are ones out that are much more efficient, it's still completely functional. So its utilitarian relevance is understood within a future scenario. So it represents the kind of problem that a product designer could at some point in the future be working on. And the next project is The Umbrellas for a Civil but Discontent Man. And so resting on the ideas within Freud's essay, Civilization and Its Discontents, these umbrellas combine a symbol of gentlemanly refinement, the full-size black umbrella, with an element from more manly sword-bearing times. So the umbrellas offer a brief psychological respite from the dictates of social amiability. Aggressive fantasies are allowed and even encouraged during the daily commute to the office. So the samurai version of this set is in production right now and quite popular worldwide. The other two are actually going to be available any week now. And during the month that this was first publicized on the design blogs, our website received 3.2 million hits. And if you Google Samurai Umbrella, the first 50 pages are just covered with lots of images and videos of people with this. Now this is a definite hybrid between the discursive and the commercial. So while the Ghost Still, that distillation kit, it's more provocative and would likely never be commercialized, the umbrella here it's a softer critical voice that's susceptible to being missed, especially when it's on the marketplace, when you don't expect that kind of voice. So part of my research regarding commercialized discursive projects is going to center on this product. Certainly a big question is why people want this object and how its message is explicitly or implicitly received, and even if at all. And the last project that I'm going to show today is called Piggy. It's a philanthropic piggy bank. And it draws attention, it draws attention towards others who are less fortunate. So the large pig is for personal savings, and the piglet here is for charitable savings. So this is a project that our studio is self-producing, having it mass manufactured overseas. It's sold in museum shops and kids' boutiques and catalogs, and it's received a lot of nice press on TV and magazines and online. And this is what I feel is a pretty good hybrid between this discursive and the commercial. With the umbrella, which is also this discursive commercial hybrid, its message is easier to miss altogether or to misinterpret. But with Piggy, we feel this is a more reliable message. So the primary intent of this project was to address issues of gratitude, selfishness, and philanthropy. But we were able to do this in a commercial way that can make more people aware of it, rather than if it was just in the exhibition space, which is really how it started. It really started off as this exhibition piece, and then we realized this sort of opportunity for it. So the opportunity to really to harness the market to extend the designer's voice. And really, this is where my current interests lie. So, and what my discursive making will be addressing, at least in the near term. So, in conclusion, then, my intent here was to give you a sense of the breadth of my practice across these three areas of research, theory, and making. And as I mentioned, it's this range of expertise that makes me a unique and valuable designer, thinker, and teacher. And many of the problems that we encounter stem from the difficulties with the integration and dialogue between the constituents within the product development process. Often they speak different languages, and they suffer from ethnocentrism. And I think it's this breadth of my education, interest, and expertise that really constructively attends to that problem. But given the breadth of this, it may be difficult to home in and get a succinct answer to the who you are question, which is actually an important one. But to help, if I'm going to synopsize, as a design researcher, I'm interested in more designerly modes of inquiry that capitalize on the generative, optimistic, and possibility-positing nature of design. And this resonates really with what makes designers special. But I'm capable and not afraid to call in the big scientific guns when it's appropriate for the project. As a theorist, I'm a bottom-up guy, so I spend my time at the level of practice, and I move up to the level of theory when I need its help and support. And eventually I return to practice with something that hopefully is useful and relevant to others. And I do this work largely from a sense of necessity, when there's an issue that I either can't ignore because it's so interesting, but more often when I feel that I have to understand something better to be an effective designer or an effective teacher. And as a maker, I want to work across these four fields. I'm an opportunist. I shift when something piques my interest or an opportunity is afforded, like my new fatherhood or having to spread cremation ashes. And now I'm particularly interested in this realm of discursive design because I think it's marginalized and misunderstood, and I think I can make a real contribution. And more specifically within that, I'm interested in discursive design that can exist in the marketplace, so that hybrid form, because it's unique and it also presents some interesting challenges. But it also affords the ability to spread these ideas further. So it takes them beyond the gallery and the exhibition catalog. So, and as I mentioned, I'm interested in entrepreneurialism and the various strategies and methods that designers employ to get their ideas out in the world. So this is sometimes complicated, sometimes risky, and nearly always frustrating. But it's a really crucial component to the design process, and it allows the service and value of our design to be realized by others. And that's really the end goal, to have this service and value realized by others. And that's also the end of my talk. So thank you, and I think we have maybe 10 plus minutes for questions.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions?
What was
Yes.
the origin of the four different, like what set you
What
down
set
on
it-
that path?
Yeah.
Identifying those.
Well, it's similar to what I just mentioned about, like, the theory, so living at this level of practice and then moving up to theory when I feel I need to understand something better. And that's really the case. I mean, there's so much confusion out there with all this design stuff. And a classic example is someone does a responsible project or an experimental project, and they have it on a blog, and then you see the comments that people are marked, oh, that thing's crap, it would never work well, it would never sell. But that is nothing to do with the intentions of the project itself. And part of that is because we don't have this language and this common understanding to help us work through this communication and the critique. So it was really born out of, especially the discursive stuff, out of a lot of the experiences I was having at SAIC, working with artists who were interested in this designed objects arena, and also designers who were kind of on this sort of artsy side. And Stephanie had some of the similar experiences here at UIC. So Ruru was born out trying to figure out this mess of all these different types of design. And when I talk about this, I usually show this long list of like 35 different types of design, which it's a lot of clutter. And because of the field of design isn't as advanced with the theory, that we're still kind of stuck with this. So this is this first pass at trying to make sense of this whole world of stuff. And I think fundamentally it helps. It's based on design intention, so it's something that a designer can figure out. So it's like what I really want out of this project. What's my intent? And it's not based specifically on design reception, which is what a lot of theory is. So looking at a product and sort of reading it. The problem there, of course, is that there's something lost in the communication from intention and reception. Like I say, hopefully there's an alignment, but for a designer, what's most important is, if it's a tool for a designer, what do I want out of this project? And so that's what we think is the benefit of it. So, yeah. Yes?
A related question to the categories.
Yeah.
It seems like the way you use the categories to set up headings and then to drop projects under those headings.
Right.
And recognize, of course, that there's some hybrid categories. But it seems like it's not much of a stretch to say that all those categories exist in various degrees in all the projects you show.
Yes.
And so I'm wondering about, but your language isn't addressing, here are these here's what I do as a singular approach as a designer that recognizes different levels within the various projects. You know what I mean? It's kind of a mapping question.
Right, and that's actually...
Under these headings as opposed to using these headings as degrees of understanding for every project.
Right. The part of the work of the book is going to be articulating that very specific issue. Because certainly when anytime you're using a simplified sort of framework rubric, there's always this slop, this stuff that just doesn't quite fit in a bucket or overlaps. And so that issue is certainly one that's important and one that we'll be addressing more specifically in the book. But part of what I'm doing here is I was using it largely as a way to reinforce the theory stuff that I introduced just with my own work. So it's a little bit of an artificial way of addressing with it. So it's just a way of structuring, talking about the work that I've done, but also in a way that links up to this conceptual framework that I just talked about in the theory. But yeah, you're absolutely correct that. The issue of multiple intentions is the thing that it's most contentious about this. So, because and I would state that a designer never has one singular intention with it. There's always something else brewing. But again, as a tool for the designer, if we can kind of look at what's most important for me in this project, and I would claim that you can always get to that, where one of them is more important than the other. Because in the design process, you're making all these thousands of decisions on a design project, and you'll get to a point where you have to make a choice. You have two competing issues, and you have to make a choice. Ooh, is it really about making money, or is it about the service? And so I claim that you actually can get to that point where you can have a dominant intention with it. But almost always you've got these other layers that are a part of it. And it's sort of clear with that. I brought out some of them more explicitly, but as you mentioned, that there's lots of, just the notion of experimentation, for example. I mean, the most interesting design work for most designers is when there's a level of experimentation going on. So even if you're working on a commercial project, wow, that's what really can get you going, is this other layer. But there'll be a point at which, like, ooh, do I begin to experiment more, or wow, do I have to make some design decisions about getting this thing to market or having it be more useful, usable, and desirable? So, yeah.
With your theory of the
Yeah.
value of dispossession,
Yeah.
this is loaded, but are you proposing that the value is a monetary value on top of the
Yeah.
object, or that someone should pay more for being dispossessed?
Okay. No, and I was. It's quite a complicated. You're addressing what I didn't do. I very quickly sort of said that I didn't define what I meant by value. I talked very colloquially about benefit, worth, and it's very abstract in that way. So it's not necessarily commercial value. And actually, specifically, it's really not. It's kind of hard to think about it as commercial value. But my dissertation was dealing with these really complicated issues of value. And it's a whole, I mean, so the branch of philosophy that deals with that is axiology. And so it's around for 100 years, and there's still these really major issues, like, is value subjective or objective? Where does value live? And individuals outside of individuals, that make it really complex. So for this specifically, because it is a tool that I adapted for designers, it's really just this more colloquial notion of value. So some benefit that arises. And in most cases, it's not monetary. It's this sort of just this, yeah, it's a benefit. For these Amish, it was this feeling good. I felt good about walking past that vacuum cleaner, because I was like, no, I don't need that. So it was this demonstration of their aesthetical beliefs and their values. Other questions? Yes.
The issue of responsible design.
Yeah.
How do you justify coming up with something like a jump rope?
Yeah.
But it's all of a sudden interactive because it lights up and double dutch has been around forever.
Right.
And it seems really irresponsible to spend so much manpower and gas power and everything
Right.
to get these different things together makes it actually less accessible for the youth.
Right. Well, actually, that's a good point regarding the. As I defined responsible design, it's specifically socially responsible design. One of the issues that you find is and sustainability wasn't mentioned anywhere in one of these, and it's largely because it's one of a lot of different qualities that could be included in all projects, like beauty, for example. There's not one about beauty, and I would say that sustainability is that same type of category, that it can really run across all of them. So that one was specifically for a specific kind of audience. So we have this definite problem in first world countries with childhood obesity, and there's something to the allure of an electronic object that actually can do a lot of things that a regular jump rope could. So the proposition here is it's worth. The problem is worth that kind of solution, admitting that it's a higher carbon footprint than otherwise, which is one of the reasons why that throwdown was sort of kind of a complement to that. So is there another way to approach the problem where you don't need batteries and you're not injection molding a lot of parts? So yeah, I completely agree where you're coming from, but we specifically pulled environmental responsibility out of the scheme, out of the framework, because it can lay across all of the different realms. Other questions? No one wants to know about how Stephanie and I work together? It's not easy. So,